The quarry near Patterson supplies the crushed stone known as ballast used on railway lines. It's one of just 3 in the state, the others at Hard Glen near Murrurundi and Bombo at Kiama. The continued state ownership of all 3 was thrown into doubt in April when they were deemed non-core businesses by Transport Minister Bruce Baird. At a meeting today between union officials, local politicians and the quarry's 16 employees, member for Maitland Peter Blackmore told the workers he'd do everything in his power to see the operation wasn't sold off.
The employees' record here will stand for itself, that they've been providing some 290,000 tonnes of ballast to State Rail for $5 per tonne. I know that comparative costs are certainly well and above what the quarry provides here for State Rail.
The workforce has been halved and productivity doubled over the past 10 years, with the quarry also supplying domestic and national customers. But funds for a new crushing mill allocated in last year's budget have been withheld, and now the government is seeking expressions of interest from private operators to run the quarry.
I believe that a new crusher plant installed here, it was promised, it was in the budget, will lift their productivity some 20 to 25% and therefore make it more cost effective.
It's a matter of honour when services sides meet on the paddock. An infringement card is something like a medal if the deed kept the other side from scoring. Points mean pride and they're not come by easily.
This game's Army against Air Force, annual grudge match I suppose you'd say.
The national tournament is being hosted by the Australian Combined Services Soccer Association at RAF Williamtown and sees the best boots in the Army, Navy and Air Force congregate for the week-long tournament. A Kiwi contingent has flown in as well. The New Zealanders made their mark with a 5-0 win against Navy, and in the women's division, Navy 3 defeated the RAF 1. The Army men's side claimed a bruising 5-0 win over the RAF this afternoon.
On Sunday, Sunday at 11 o'clock, there's a game where the Australian Defence Force team selected from this competition will play the New Zealand Combined Services team, and that's open to the public.
With the last 2 premierships under their belt and having won 2 of this season's 3 clashes with Muswellbrook, Aberdeen in the orange, black and white started as firm favourites. And it wasn't long before the Aberdeen Tigers had some points on the board through an opportunist try by prop Paul Smith. A successful conversion had the Tigers leading 6-0 when blood was spilled. Muswellbrook's playing coach Chris Cummings and fellow forward Anthony Matthews had to leave the park after clashing heads in a tackle. Shortly after, a brawl broke out. Aberdeen's Tim Smith and Jason Phelps were sin-binned, giving Muswellbrook's David Edwards the space he needed to go in. Aberdeen was 6-4 up when Muswellbrook began turning the tables, a penalty kick and a try putting them 12-6 ahead at the half-time bell. That lead was short-lived. Aberdeen began pegging them back in the second half. In the 68th minute, Mark Feeney successfully converting a try, giving his team victory by 14 points to 12. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
At about 4:30, the 20-year-old's car veered onto the wrong side of John Renshaw Drive between Curry and Beresfield and sideswiped an oncoming utility. The driver of the small truck suffered a gashed leg and his passenger was showered with glass. Some fragments were lodged in his eyes. The driver of the car received deep facial lacerations and fractured ribs and was flown by rescue helicopter to the John Hunter Hospital, where she is in a stable condition. Rescuers had to dig through piles of luggage packed tightly around the driver's compartment to free the woman. Her possessions were strewn across the road and traffic was delayed till the scene was cleared.
First to give evidence today was Dr Glenn Reeves, who was working at John Hunter Hospital's immunology clinic at the time of Juliet Spencer's death. In January 1992, Juliet started a desensitisation program to treat her allergies and asthma. She died on April 9th that year after Sister Suzanne Jones gave Juliet an injection that had been topped up with another patient's stronger solution. Dr Reeves said he was aware topping up was an unsafe practice before Juliet's death, but under examination admitted he hadn't spoken to nurses about the dangers of topping up. Also taking the stand today was Dr David Sutherland, who was the director of the immunology unit when the 13-year-old died. Dr Sutherland said when Juliet and her mother first came to him, he tried to dissuade Juliet from taking the treatment. In response to suggestions by counsel for Juliet's parents that that might not have been so, Dr Sutherland replied, "If you suggest I didn't, then you're saying I'm lying." Examination then focused on the possible cause of Juliet's death. When Dr Sutherland was asked why he didn't immediately alert investigating officers to the possibility that the topped-up mixture had caused the tragedy, he said he hoped it wasn't true, because if it was, the mistake by Sister Jones killed Juliet. Coroner Jeff Brown has adjourned the inquest till November 24th.
Accustomed to caring for kids, the Newcastle Lions Club launched the $40,000 appeal today. The United Nations has already evacuated some critically injured children from war-torn Bosnia, but there are hundreds more still needing urgent medical treatment. Money from the appeal will be used to pay for airfares for 2 wounded children and their parents back to Newcastle, where they'll receive medical treatment, food, clothing and accommodation for up to 6 months.
Kids who have nothing to do with the war or skirmishes, and they pay the penalty really, and they pay a high penalty.
Newcastle doctors and some private hospitals have already offered their services free of charge. A Care Australia medical team due to leave this Friday to assess the patients has been delayed because of heavy fighting in the country.
They couldn't get them through and they just couldn't guarantee their safety, so they put it off for 2 weeks. So they're going on the 27th now.
Head of the Newcastle project, Dr Chris Howe, hopes the idea will catch on.
If the project works out throughout Australia, it could be within 12 months, maybe 150 or 200 children a year being treated. And there's no reason why the private sector, all aspects of the private sector, can't support this in your own community.
All donations can be made at any Newcastle Permanent Building Society or can be sent to the Newcastle Lions Club. If all goes according to plan, it's hoped the children selected will arrive by the end of next month. Melinda Smith, NBN News.
From verse reading to ballroom dancing, aerobics to choirs, the abundance of talent in Newcastle Catholic primary schools was obvious at last night's musical festival. 8 schools from the inner city cluster combined to put on a special Education Week concert, each performing a different type of act. St John's Lambton told the tale of the bunyip before cutting loose with some slick-looking dance steps. From there, St Teresa's showed off the strength of their vocal cords, and St James of Katara got down to some serious aerobics. Then for something totally different, the book In a Dark, Dark Bush was reenacted by St Joseph's Merewether before St Patrick's made a tribute to the Indigenous people with a feast of light, colour and movement.
Chief Superintendent Rick Kane takes a personal interest in the officers serving under his command. Many work on their own from small stations or police residences throughout the Hunter. Most receiving long service medals have experienced their share of hardship to go with the job. Officers who'd served 15 years were awarded the National Medal, those with 25 years service their first clasp. 2 North Region citations were awarded to officers involved in the Dungog hostel fire 2 years ago. Scientific investigator Neil Raymond was recognised for his work in piecing together evidence.
Acting North Region Commander wished me to pass on to you his congratulations also for a job very well done.
Senior Constable David Watson was also awarded a citation for his investigation into the fire, which claimed 12 lives. Merit certificates went to Sergeant James Hall from Corindai for his search for a bank robber at Willow Tree in May, and commendations went to 2 Merriwar constables for their bravery in capturing an armed offender. Federal member for Patterson, Bob Horn, paid tribute to Sergeant Jeff Smith, who has since returned to police duties after being shot twice in the Nelson Bay Police Station last April. Andrew Lobb, NBN News. Students from the Year 10 Industrial Arts class at Merewether High began plotting their quest to win the Port Pedal Prix on the first day of the school year.
We've spent virtually all the last term working flat out on it. The teacher's given quite a lot of his own time. We've spent every weekend in since the last holidays.
Under the supervision of teacher Steve Goldsworthy, the boys set to the task of building their machine known as an HPV, or human-powered vehicle. They've exercised entrepreneurial as well as practical skills to bring the project together. Through sponsorships, they've been able to afford aluminium for the mainframe construction. Used bike parts have gone toward the drivetrain and braking system. The HPV averages about 25 kilometres an hour and will need to cover about 200 laps of a closed street circuit at Port Macquarie. But being first over the finishing line isn't all it takes to win.
2/3 of the marks for the overall winner are taken from the design stage, which is we must present the bike with a folio to local engineers at Port Macquarie.
Westport Technology High will host the event at Port Macquarie's Rotary Park this weekend, but the boys from Newcastle believe they've put in the effort to give all comers a run for their money.
Today marks the start of a new era for the Hunter Region Lifesaver Rescue Helicopter Service when Angel 2 finally got airborne for the flight from Brisbane to its Broadmeadow base. The new aircraft has captured a great deal of attention in the aviation industry, being state-of-the-art and the benchmark by which civil emergency aircraft will now be judged. Pilot Peter Cook explains why the chopper is unique.
This particular aircraft is a Bell 412SP and although it's not unique in the world, many of the design features which have been included on it are it has a winch installation which was designed and built in Australia. It's capable of taking up to 5 stretcher patients, which is very unusual if not unique in the civilian world. And it's basically been completely fitted as an emergency medical helicopter.
February 13 this year marked the blackest day in the Hunter Service's history when, during the execution of duty in atrocious weather conditions, Angel 1 came to grief near the Barrington Guest House west of Dungog. Power lines which hadn't been seen by the crew because of weather conditions, the reason for the crash. The new helicopter is valued at close to $3 million and has the capacity to be able to transfer 5 patients should the situation arise. It won't be going into use immediately. Pilot and crew familiarisation will take place before it moves onto the front line.
Students, staff and parents were heartbroken at Fassifern Primary School this morning. A few hours earlier, fire had raced through a demountable classroom. The kinder class was lost to the blaze, along with hundreds of dollars worth of books, valuable computer equipment, piano and the year's work.
Our children's first stories and drawings.
The school's 70 families work hard through the P&C to help equip classrooms. For them, the devastating fire is a real setback.
Well, we'll just keep working.
These demountables are just very, very hot in summer, and we went to a lot of trouble to organise to get air conditioning, and they only got put in 3-4 months ago, and they're not going to get the benefit in summer. It's just so frustrating.
The damage bill has been estimated at about $200,000, but luckily another demountable classroom was available in the region and it will be set up over the weekend. Investigators discovered several points where attempts were made to set the buildings on fire, as well as signs that the demountable had been broken into. It's the second recent serious school fire. 2 weeks ago, a fire was deliberately lit at New Lambton Primary. Andrew Lobb, NBN News.
Watch your fingers when you put it down on the stretcher. The other guy's got... high on Troy, you gotta... That's it,
Drawn. If you are here, please step forward.
Bushfires, they're inevitable during a dry Australian summer. At present, the cost of running bushfire brigades is shared by insurance companies, the state government and local councils. But if Emergency Services Minister Terry Griffiths has his way, insurance companies will pay more to keep the brigades operating and local councils less. The planned changes to the law were announced during the official opening of Clarencetown Bushfire Brigade in the Hunter Valley.
Instead of local government paying 25% of the annual budget, the New South Wales Bushfire Services, they'll now pay 12.3%, which is a significant reduction.
That will mean a council like Dungog will save an extra $30,000, money that can be spent elsewhere in the region. The firefighting strength in the Dungog Council area has been bolstered with the commissioning of 4 new fire trucks, a timely arrival with some in the business anticipating a hot summer.
We're expecting a very, very busy and dangerous season.
Jane Anderson, NBN News.
200 and Angst is off. Angst has put 3 lengths on them in a twinkling, and this great grey filly from the coalfields is racing away, and this is the best win of all. Angst is easing up in the last bit, and she makes them look like second-raters in the tea race.
Noel Mayfield-Smith, the happiest trainer around after that win. Angst was favourite and paid $2.60 and $1.30. The trifecta just $54.50. At Moonee Valley, the feature event was the John F. Feehan Stakes.
They're the lazy man's hang glider. You don't need to find a cliff to jump off, and you can stay in the air a lot longer thanks to a 65 horsepower engine. About 26 trikes, as they're known, rose with the sun, leaving Sydney on a journey that will lead them up the east coast of Australia to Cape York.
Well, we're obviously all in it for the adventure.
They're also in it to raise money for children with cancer. First stop this morning, Williamtown, just north of Newcastle. What's it like when you're flying up there?
Almost undescribable. It's just a real buzz.
You're not inside a cockpit. You don't have a big sheet of glass over your face or anything like that. You're pretty well out in the elements.
On the ground, there was time for a quick snooze, a glance at the map, extra fuel, and they were off again. Next stop, Taree.
The conference is concerned with issues raised by a federal parliamentary committee investigation into substandard shipping. 200 delegates from national and international industry have gathered in Newcastle for the conference, opened by Federal Transport Minister Senator Bob Collins. He concedes Australia can't solve the problem alone.
Australia has got a prominent role to play in doing it, and most of our shipping is international shipping that comes to Australia. It can't be done unilaterally. But through the organisation of the International Maritime Organisation, the United Nations, we do have an important influence to play on improving what has become an international scandal.
During the early 1990s, 40 bulk carriers operating around the world either sank or had hull failure, the Kirky highlighting Australia isn't immune from a shipping disaster. In addition to improving ship safety, protection of the environment is also high on the conference agenda. Senator Collins believes solutions from the Newcastle workshop must be practical and effective.
You can't make the cost of shipping so prohibitive that it can't be used to transport cargo any longer. But at the same time, there's got to be an acknowledgement that a cost factor for safety has to be included in freight rates.
The conference continues tomorrow with crewing of vessels to be discussed. The finding by Deputy State Coroner Peter Gould that National Parks and Wildlife were to blame for the death of toddler Levi Torno, who fell from Sydney's North Head, has sparked a rethink of public safety at lookouts. Newcastle's coastline is endowed with spectacular views. However, the stretch between Bar Beach and the Bogey Hole could be described as a trap for the unwary. Considering the popularity of the King Edward Park and Strzelecki Lookout areas, both have good safety records but do possess risk areas. Newcastle Council today began a reassessment of its liability to check whether its lookouts may have to have safety precautions upgraded. The section of headland between Strzelecki Lookout and Bar Beach has a walking track which could be described as dangerous. While Newcastle Council has made an effort to improve safety in some parts, there are still those enthusiastic enough to use the track despite its dangers. The scenic lookout at King Edward Park also provides another case in point, with some people keen to get a better look, while below, tracks near the Bogey Hole also pose a danger. Newcastle Council expects to receive its legal advice tomorrow, which will give an indication on the implications of the North Head case and whether safety fencing needs to be increased.
Novocastrians are going bananas over their club making a Winfield Cup grand final.
Oh mate, that's not just a reserve grade, that is the main game on Sunday. And of course the reserve grade are representing our town, and mate, it's going to be huge. That's going to be a great impact. They'll be on national television representing our town, and mate, when we win, wow!
Blue and red colours have sprouted throughout the city. If the gutsy reserve grade side wins against North Sydney on Sunday, it will be the first time a Newcastle League side has won a Winfield Cup grand final, and their home supporters don't care what grade they are playing.
It is still one of our teams, and they are there in a grand final, and as I said earlier, of course, it is the first time we've been in a grand final. I think it's a good news story. I think it's something everyone should be supporting.
The Knights were minor premiers in the tough reserve grade competition. After losing 24-22 against North Sydney in the major semi, they came back against Canterbury last weekend with a convincing 33-20 win. Footy Tab believes the reserve grade grand final will be a close one, giving punters a half a point start to North Sydney. Fruit shop owner Frank Frasca believes the Knights will win and has taught his staff the same winning formula. Win, lose or draw, the Knights and their supporters will return to the licensed club at Marathon Stadium on Sunday night to celebrate. Jason Neuenhoff, NBN News.
Organisers say it's a last chance to blow off steam before students knuckle down to the rigours of end-of-year exams. Hunter Street was a moving mass, stretching from the West End to the top of town as 3,000 revellers trod the trail of a time-honoured tradition to visit the Strip's 16 pubs and clubs.
The whole thing went off quite well. It was well organised. There was good rapport between the organisers from the university side and the police. There were a couple of broken windows, but not directly attributable to the university students. The biggest trauma or trouble at all was keeping them off the road and keeping Hunter Street flowing.
A fire alarm went off in the crush at the Casbah Hotel. A small army of street sweepers followed the crowd, clearing discarded cans and broken beer glasses. The students had employed their own security guards and provided a bus to pick up stragglers. The event is a boon for the city's hoteliers. The extra cans, wines and kegs ordered bring in thousands of dollars. Some pubs hide anything that isn't nailed down ahead of the approaching horde of souveniring students. Proprietor of the Lucky Country Hotel, Tony Lindley, has weathered such onslaughts for the past 3 years, boasting a few scalp.
Andrew, it was a really good night. They're a well-behaved crowd. I think they're a credit to themselves. I happened to find some of the ladies went upstairs to use my toilets, and I think someone inadvertently left a fire hose on, and whilst trying to turn it off I had to hose a couple of people down, but that was all in the fun of the night. I think they took it in the spirit it was given.
The Hastings Centre is set up on the Pacific Highway near Fernbank Creek Road. For the next 3 weekends, it will offer motorists a break from driving from 9 o'clock Friday mornings until 9 o'clock Sunday nights. Centres like these have become a major part of the fight against the road toll, and about 190 of them have been set up throughout Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria and South Australia. More than 5,000 people are expected to use the Hastings Centre alone, dropping by for a tea, coffee, Milo or cordial and a Kit Kat.
21-year-old Alwyn Duke is the favourite for the fight to be held at Twin Towns Services Club at Tweed Heads on October the 6th. But his opponent, ex-Olympian Justin Rousel, will be no pushover. Alwyn has been training up to 4 hours a day for the past 5 weeks and believes the effort will pay off.
I've no doubt in my mind I will win come Wednesday night.
George Ptolemy has trained Alwyn since he was 12 years old. He has watched his charge win the Australian light welterweight title in the amateur ranks before turning pro. Professionally, Alwyn has an impressive 8-win, 1-draw and 1-loss record. His last victim was Aman Ramos, rated number 5 on the WBF circuit. He defeated Ramos last month. George is also confident the youngster will win the right to challenge for the Australian lightweight title.
There's no doubt about that, but I can't see Justin beating Alwyn.
Current Australian lightweight champ Scott Brown of Melbourne will have to defend his title against the winner of the Duke Rousel bout. Jason Neuenhoff, NBN News.
And off they go. A flag started wide and Siren jump well, going quickly to Defective Detective, and down the outside Mr. Bojangles. Those two come away. Defective Detective in front. In second place Mr. Bojangles, and they were followed back on the inside Buddy Boy, but Defective Detective whizzes away and Defective Detective scores by 3 lengths. Mr. Bojangles second. Third home there was Buddy Boy. A good way back to Siren, and last of all was Bondi.
With the Hunter a 2-hour drive from Sydney, it's ideally placed as a training centre for Olympic athletes.
Because they won't be able to use the actual Olympic facilities and stay at the Olympic Village, they'll be looking for alternatives.
Ken Clifford and Jim Barry are the two men spearheading a campaign to convince the Sydney Olympic Committee the Hunter can offer an alternative. Their first task is to form a local Olympic committee.
What we then plan to do is to go down to the Olympic Bid Committee in Sydney with our information on the Hunter and sell that to the committee to let them know that these are the facilities we have, these are the facilities that we are planning for the future and can provide.
Undeniably, the Newcastle Hockey Centre is a world-class facility and as such is expected to be a major draw card for athletes wanting to train here in the years leading up to the 2000 Olympics. With other facilities like the equestrian centres at Scone and Lochinvar expected to play a similar role, the spin-offs for the community will be immense. Apart from the economic boost of having the international athletes in town, Mr. Barry believes their presence could help the region attract more funding to build or upgrade other local sporting facilities. Ken Clifford says high on the list would be building an Olympic standard athletics track and aquatic centre. But Gary Screen from the Northern New South Wales Soccer Federation wants to go further than just being a training centre. The likely venue would be Marathon or Mitre 10 Stadium, but amenities at both centres would need renovating, as Olympic soccer regulations require a fully seated venue. If the Hunters' proposals are successful, Mr. Barry doesn't expect any work to begin for at least 2 years.
It's a 3-day party in the Shire with thousands of locals and visitors celebrating September Fest. A parade down the main street at Nambucca Heads had a touch of glamour, history and pure entertainment. The festival was a year in the planning, but if the smiles on some of these young faces are anything to go by, the hard work has paid off. Big Dog will visit tomorrow and the fest winds up with a spectacular fireworks display tomorrow night. Peter Ryan, NBN News. After successfully being introduced in Gosford, Sydney and Goulburn, Taree shopkeepers were keen to see if late shopping on Friday night would also be a boom for their area. If they are to go by last night's response, then the answer is no. However, the Downtown Committee will continue with the 3-week trial of Friday night shopping.
It's got potential. We're on a 3-week trial and we need to give it the 3 weeks to see what the reaction is.
The committee believes that end-of-the-week shopping is an attraction to consumers and will help combat the recession and the planned bypass of its town. Next Friday night, street activities will also be introduced to add to the attraction.
Yes, I went around and had a chat to quite a few of the shopkeepers. They all agreed that it was quiet. A lot of them hadn't had customers through, but they could see that there were people around and that they were trying it for this time and looking at the next couple of weeks to trial it as well.
However, if there is still no increase in shoppers over the next 2 Friday nights, then business operators are likely to drop the idea. Jason Neuenhoff, NBN News.